Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Welcome to a very special Facebook Live where I'm going to talk about all things scheduling. Because one of the biggest questions that I get from teachers all the time is, how do you fit it all in? How do you get everything in your day so that you can teach all your reading, all of your writing, and your language, your spelling, your vocabulary? How do you do it all? And so tonight I wanted to hop on and just give you guys some really amazing resources that will help you with this. I'm going to walk you through different sample schedules, and then I'm going to give you a bunch of pages for free to support you in this. So I'm excited to kind of go through these plans with you about scheduling, because I know in the summer, teachers are always thinking about, how am I going to set my year up next year a little bit different? What can I do to make some tweaks to make it a little bit stronger for my kids? So that's why I decided to go on live with you tonight and talk about that. I do have two guys behind the scenes that are going to answer questions that you have. If you're commenting, I won't be able to really see them because I'm going to kind of show you some slides. So it'll be almost like a webinar, and you'll get some information through slides. But Piper and Andy are going to answer any of your questions. So they're on tonight, and they're going to help you as I'm going through the information. So hello. Hi, Carolyn. I see you. She said it's only midnight here. You made it live. I'm so excited for those of you that are making it live. And let me tell you too, if you are wondering, this will be available as a replay. So you can actually watch this whenever you want. So if you're like, hey, what did Jen say about a 90-minute block? You can go back and watch this again. So it's unlike webinars, where webinars, you have to kind of be there live. For a Facebook, you can watch this as a replay. So that's really good news for y'all. And that's why I wanted to make this a Facebook Live and not just a webinar, so everyone can get a chance to watch it over and over again. You can come back and watch it in July. Well, it's July already. Oh my gosh, July 1st. You can watch it in August if you want, before you go back to school too. Okay, so this is a little bit, the stuff I'm going to share with you is from one of my webinars. It's called Gen Mego 101. So I'm not sharing the whole webinar, but I'm just sharing some scheduling stuff with you. So here we go. I'm going to actually close myself down, so you won't see me until the end. I'm going to pop back up at the end. But if I have myself with the slides, let me show you what it looks like. It's really small. You see that? So I'm going to close my face down, which I know none of you will really mind, right? So that you can see the slides a little bit better. So here I go. Oh, and you know what? When I do that, let me see. Let me try something. When I close, I forget about this, because when I close myself down, you actually don't hear me anymore. Let me try this a different way, because I'm remembering this. No, that doesn't look right. There, that's better. Hopefully you can see the whole thing, and I'll have to stay on the screen. I forgot that, because when I take myself off the screen, you can't hear me. So that's not a good thing. So I'll stay on the screen, and you'll just won't be able to see that bottom corner of my slide, but we should be all good. Okay, here we go. So, that's not very good, is it? I'll move around. I'll move us around. This is going to be, well, we can do it. We can do it that way, but it's teeny tiny, isn't it? Bummer, technology. That's still teeny tiny. Maybe, no, that's teeny tiny. This is what happens when you go live. Okay. We're going to try this. Okay. I'm going to have to go like this. And that's going to be the best I can do. Now, I can barely see this. Oh my gosh. If I'm squinting, it's because I can barely see my slides. But, ooh, I got an idea. No, that's not. I want to go. No, I want that to go. What did I just do? You guys, this is what happens when you're live. No, I don't want that. I don't want that either. Okay, I'm going to squint. So I'm going to show you, first of all, a reading workshop framework for if you have an hour. So if you have an hour to do reading workshop, I'm just going to lay out what I would do in that time. So my reading workshop has 4 big parts. The first one is a book talk. It's just 1 or 2 minutes, basically just a really quick commercial about books in my classroom library that I want my kids to start reading, that I want to introduce them to different genres and stuff. So I'll do that. And then the second thing I do in my workshop is my mini lesson. And that's about 10 minutes or so. It looks like I put 10 or 12 minutes on there. My goal is to always stay under 12 minutes, because I want to have as much time as I can for that third step, which is actually when we're independent reading. So the kids will be independent reading. And with an hour, you have about 35, 40 minutes for this. Now, your kids probably at the beginning of the year will need some time to build their stamina for reading, but you can do, with 40 minutes, you can do 2 guided reading groups. You can have the kids maybe reading independently for 20 minutes and in a center for 10 and a center for 10. You can play around with that third step and really try different things out throughout the year too. And then you'll have still 10 minutes at the end to wrap it all up with your share, where the kids turn and talk with a partner and then some share with the whole class. So this is the ideal reading workshop for an hour if you have an hour. And then the the reading workshop if you have 45 minutes. And I'm giving you copies of all of these. Isn't that cool? So you're going to get copies of all these. The one that you have 45 minutes for is you have the skip the book talk. Maybe you do it like twice a week instead of every day. And then you just go right into your mini lesson, which again, you try and get about 10 minutes. And then you have a half an hour still for independent reading time. And then at the end, you have a 5-minute share. So they'll turn and talk with a partner for maybe a minute or two, and then spend about 3 minutes having them all share with the class. So that's a 45-minute reading workshop. I always say you can get away with a 45-minute reading workshop. I like to have an hour, but if you only have 45 minutes, it's still very doable. You just might only see one guided reading group during the day then. And then the next version I have is maybe you only have a half an hour. And again, this works for all grade levels. If you're using the workshop format, you can do this from kindergarten up through all the way up. If you only have a half hour to teach reading every day, I would recommend an A-B schedule because it's just not enough time to do the entire steps in a workshop. So what I would do is I would start with a mini lesson. And again, that's going to be about 10 minutes long. And then I would have the kids go into their independent reading time or their centers, whatever you're doing. Maybe you're doing an intervention or a guided reading group. So you'll have 20 minutes for that. So on your A day, if you have a half-hour reading block, you can do a 10-minute mini lesson and a 20-minute independent time. So then on the B day, when they come back together, you'll actually start with a share on your B day for your reading workshop. So you'll start with maybe a good share, like a nice lengthy 10-minute share where the kids turn and talk with a partner about what they did during the independent time on the A day. And then you have them share with the class, and then you can review the skill. So spend 5 minutes or so going over your anchor chart from the day before, reviewing that mini lesson, and then you'll still have about 15 minutes for independent reading time that day. And then on the next day, you would do your A day again. So you're really doing a mini lesson like every other day and just kind of breaking that workshop apart. Now, if you have a schedule where you don't have a whole hour of time and you have 30 minutes in the morning for reading, and then you can do another 20 at the end of the day, you could sort of combine the A-B schedule in one day like that too, if you get my drift. So your workshop doesn't have to be that entire hour. Maybe you do a book talk and you do a mini lesson and then you have to go to music class, but you can come back and do your independent reading time then. I always, when I did that, it worked really well as long as I prepped my kids and told them, we're going to be starting our reading workshop independent time right when we get back from music. You know exactly what to do. We're not going to waste any time. And you get them all, like when they come back, they go right to work. So you can train them to do that. So if you have a wonky schedule this year that's coming up and you have these weird breaks, you can break up the workshop throughout the day too. It's not necessarily something that you can't do. And if you have kids who are getting pulled for special needs, you would want them in there for the mini lesson, and then they could be pulled during the independent time as well. So just a couple suggestions there. Let's move into the writing workshop now. And again, I'm giving you all of these in just a minute. You're going to get a link to a Google Drive. In the writing workshop, you're going to start with an author's talk, which is kind of like a book talk, but it's basically an author's talk is really awesome. It's 1 or 2 minutes long. And it's basically advice from another author to the kids. So you might show a YouTube video. There's a channel on YouTube called Reading Rockets, and they have awesome videos from published authors who write children's books. And the authors it's like 1 or 2 minute clips. They look like really long videos, but they chunk them into topics that are like 1 or 2 minutes long. So you can show an author talk video, like if you're revising, maybe the author gives some advice on revising. That's a really cool resource to use. You can also search websites for authors, and they always have letters to kids and stuff like that, and just giving advice and supporting the young writers. That's the first thing. And then we do our mini lesson. So it's nice because the reading and writing workshop, they have the same kind of layout. So the mini lesson is 10 to 12 minutes or so. And then there's one additional step that I call the status of the class. This is just a couple of minutes, but it's very, very important because at this time, I find out what each one of my writers are going to be doing when they go back to their desk. So if I call each of my students, I have a little clipboard, and I'll say, okay, Sarah, what are you going to do as a writer when you get back to your desk? And then I have them tell me, and maybe I'll give them a little quick piece of advice, like don't forget to add description in your piece when you're working today. Go start writing. So every single one of my kids, I know exactly what they're going to do as writers when they go back to their desk, because there's nothing worse than as a teacher when your kids, you release them from the mini lesson to go start writing and they're just doing this. Have you ever had that happen? Or they're looking around. They are not prepared to be a writer at that time. So the status of the class eliminates that problem. So it's about 5 minutes to call on everybody in the class. That's it. And that also tells me if there's kids who don't know what to do, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go see them right away in a writing conference. It's pretty awesome because it tells me right off the bat. So that 5 minutes, super important. I wouldn't skip it. And then you have your independent writing time. And again, during that time at the beginning of the year, it's probably going to be shorter because your kids aren't going to have the stamina to write for that long. You may have a writing center set up with some graphic organizers to help them build like events or help them develop characters. Maybe you're doing something like that and then they're writing as well. So you can do different writing work pieces, or maybe you do word work during this time too. You can squeeze in some word work during the writing time independently. But you as a teacher will be doing some writing conferences and even having a guided writing group. So for example, if I take my status of the class and I know there's 6 kids that are not going to get started as writers right away, I'll just pull them all together into a small group. I won't even let them wait to one-on-one conference with them. I'll just pull them all together. And then at the end, we have the share, which is where the kids share with a partner whatever they're working on that day as a writer, and then we share with the class. So this is a 60-minute example. If you have a 45-minute writer's workshop, you might skip that author's talk. Maybe you do that once or twice a week. And then you go right into your mini lesson. You still take your status of the class and you'll have about 20, does that say 25, y'all? It's so tiny for me. I can barely see. I'm doing this off of memory. So 25 minutes for writing, and then you still have your time for the share at the end. So 45-minute writing block. This will work great for you. And again, I'm going to give you copies of all of these so you don't have to, you can always also watch it as a replay over and over again, which is really cool. But you're going to get some sweet copies I have, as I just hit my mic, I have in this awesome binder here. I'm not giving you a binder, but you get the idea. Okay, so if you have a half hour for writing workshop, now remember I went through the half hour for reading workshop, and if you missed it, you can catch the replay after we finish. But for a half hour writing workshop, it's tight. You're going to want to do an A, B day schedule, just like you would for your reading workshop. And again, you can split this up. Maybe it's an A in the morning, B in the afternoon, if you have a chunky schedule. But what I would do on my A day is I would start with my whole group lesson, which is about 10 minutes long, take my status of the class, and the kids will still have 15 minutes to write. So that's my A day, done. Mini lesson, status of class, write. And then on my B day for writing, when we got back together, it would be just the same as the reading workshop B day, where we would start actually with the share on the second day. And we would share for 10 minutes with the class. And then we would have a, what does that say? Oh my gosh. Oh, review. So we would review, just like we did in reading workshop, we would review the skill that we taught the day before. So take a look at our anchor chart. That's why I like the old school paper. I don't usually use Promethean boards. I tried that and I didn't like it. So I use old school anchor chart paper, and I'll leave it up for the next day. And we'll go over our mini lesson, review, talk about it a little bit, and then they'll have 15 minutes to continue their writing again. So then you would rotate the schedule. So the next day that's an A day, you would start a new lesson. So essentially you're doing a lesson every other day, and you can still use the workshop format with only a half hour. It's pretty awesome. I hope this is helping some people. So all of these pages, check that out. You're going to get this all for free. There's going to be a link for you to download all of these pages so you can throw them in a binder and kind of just as you're thinking over the summer, read through these different sample schedules. And there's no one right answer, right? Because everybody has a different crazy schedule and every minute counts for us as teachers in the classroom. So there's no one right answer, but maybe these can be a guide for you to help you kind of play around with ideas. And don't stress too much, because if you try out a schedule and after 3 weeks of school, it's just not working for your class, it's okay. You can just try something different then. Let's talk about what my typical day was, because I get this question a lot too. Teachers will ask me, what was it like when you were teaching? What was your typical day? So I was trained with Irene Fountas and had the privilege of being at a school that was a literacy collaborative school. I don't know if any of you are at a literacy collaborative school, but it's something that Irene and Gesu they created. And there's a lot of literacy coaches at the school, and we do a lot of 3-hour blocks. So at my school, we had a 3-hour literacy block. It was like the Taj Mahal of literacy schedules, right? So this was my typical day. I started every morning with a morning meeting. We got together at the carpet. Basically, I would just check in on the kids. How are you doing? How did everything go yesterday? We might review just really quickly our reading and writing lessons mostly. And every Monday, we spent a little extra time, not just 10 minutes. We spent a little extra time. So I did a thing that's called One Good Thing, One Bad Thing on Mondays. And we sat in our squircle, which a squircle is a square/circle at the carpet. And by the way, I did this with 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. I've taught all those grades. So we sit there and we do a one good thing, one bad thing. And I would have the kids on Mondays tell me one good thing that happened over the weekend and one bad thing. And it was a really awesome time on Monday mornings because it got us such a close community together. We got to know each other so well. And I got to understand what things they were really into, which helped me pick books for them for the classroom library. I got to just know them and build relationships. So the morning meeting on Mondays were always longer because it took a little bit of time to go around our whole squircle and share one good thing, one bad thing. And that was really something that the kids looked forward to every Monday. And then after we finished our morning meeting, we would go into our reading workshop. I always recommend doing the reading workshop first because a lot of the things that you're going to do in your reading workshop, you're going to carry into your writer's workshop. So in reading workshop, you're doing a lot of stuff like you're identifying things in books, you're pointing things out, you're having conversations, but in writing, it's so much harder because you actually have to do those things. It's not just identifying connections in a story. You're actually having to write about connections that you would put in a story. So it's a higher level skill. So the reading always goes first for that reason. And it doesn't have to be back to back. It doesn't have to be reading and then writing right after it. It can be reading in the morning, writing in the afternoon, but this was my typical day. And then I would have a language block. And that's when I did all of my interactive read alouds and I did my spelling and my vocabulary as well. So I had this luxury of having this 3-hour block. Now, I know that y'all don't have this all the time. So I'm going to show you what you could do if you have just an hour and a half for your ELA. Now, if you have an hour and a half to do all of your subjects for literacy, this is just an example of what you might want to try. And again, I would set up an A day and a B day. You might even want to do an A week and a B week. When I taught 6th grade, I played around with this. I tried it out. I didn't necessarily love the A day, B day. So I ended up trying A week, B week, and that worked for me. But you can try either way. So A day would be a 45-minute reading workshop because I'm really a big believer that the kids need that reading workshop every day. So that's a non-negotiable for me. I would have 45 minutes for my reading workshop. And on my A day, I would only spend 15 minutes on writing. What we would do then during that writing, maybe I do a grammar lesson so I can incorporate grammar into my writing subject, or maybe we do some independent writing time. So it's either 15 minutes of like a grammar thing that I'll do with the group, like an interactive edit, or we'll do some writing for 15 minutes. And that's it for writing on an A day. And then for language, I have a half an hour. And this is when I would do my spelling and maybe do an interactive read aloud. So I could do 20 minutes of spelling and a 10-minute interactive read aloud. And with my spelling, I only need a extra time on Mondays because I do everything for spelling on Monday is so heavy. And then the rest of the week, I really only need like 15 minutes for spelling the rest of the week. So I can play with that too. And then for my B day, I would still have my reading workshop for 45 minutes, but my writing then would be a half an hour. And that's when I would do a mini lesson and have 15 minutes for writing and 5 minutes for a share. And then for language, I would only have 15 minutes. So I would just do my lesson for vocabulary. I can do my vocabulary lesson in 15 minutes. So you can rotate like this, like I said. So if you're doing spelling and vocabulary at once, you would do it one day spelling with the next day vocabulary, or you could do it weekly. So you have a week of spelling and then the next week you have a week of vocabulary. So it's really up to you how you like to structure that, but those are just a few ways you can do that. There's a couple of examples I have for you if you have a 2-hour block. And again, you're getting all of these for free in just a minute. If you have a 2-hour block, you're going to do 45 minutes for your reading workshop. This is one example you can do. 45 minutes for reading, 45 minutes for writing, and then you can do a half hour for your language, where you would do both your spelling and your vocabulary. So your interactive read aloud, it might be at the end of the day when you're wrapping up and as the kids are packing up or whatever, you have everybody sit down and you do a 10, 15-minute read aloud that's interactive with them. Or it might be at the beginning of the day. Or if you have this weird 15 minutes where you come back from lunch, but it's not time to go to music yet, and you have this little time, you could squeeze an interactive read aloud in there. And at the beginning of the year, you're going to be doing a lot of interactive read alouds because you're going to be building your classroom library of books that you've read together. But when you get a couple months into the year, you might not do an interactive read aloud every day. In fact, you might do them like 3 times a week. So that's another way that you can tweak your schedule there. The second option for a 2-hour, all your literacy in 2 hours, is a 45-minute reading, a 45-minute writing, and a 30-minute language. But in your language block, you're going to do your spelling. I can't even read this. 20 minutes of spelling or vocabulary every other day or every other week. And then you can do your 10-minute interactive read aloud during that language block too. So you can rotate your spelling and vocabulary and do your read aloud during that time too. That's another option. Here's another one. You can do 45 minutes for reading, a half hour for writing, and a half hour for language. So that gives you a little extra time to play around with things too. And another option is 45 minutes for reading, a half hour for writing only, but then you have 45 minutes for language. So you can get your spelling in, your vocabulary in, and your read aloud in during your language block. So these are just a couple options. And again, you see all these pages here? These are all for you. So again, you're going to get this in just a second. And I'll have all of this in one file for you. Let me talk about the time in guided reading or in blah, 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 blah. In the reading workshop, the time that's that third step where you're doing independent reading and you're doing guided reading, because there's a lot of people that ask me questions about what goes on inside of there as well. And again, there's no one right way to do this, or there's no one right answer. So much of it depends on your students and their needs and your schedule and everything. But sometimes you might be doing interventions. Sometimes you might be doing guided reading. So you really do need to be super flexible here. So this is something that's in addition to your whole group mini lesson that you'll have. It's going to be in a small group, or even interventions might be one-on-one. And it's going to cover all reading abilities. So this is really where you're differentiating in your curriculum. Your whole group mini lesson is going to cover your grade level standards that you need to meet, that you're responsible for. And then within that workshop during the independent time, that's where you get to differentiate everything, which is great. So you can cover both fiction and nonfiction skills, and you're going to be working at students' instructional levels here. So let's take a look at what is the difference between interventions and guided reading. The big things is, if you're using the intervention program, it's going to have passages in level ranges. And if you're using guided reading, you most likely are going to be using your own texts that have use own text with the objectives. Interventions are going to be anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour. Guided reading usually sits at about 20 minutes. And then in interventions, you're going to be covering 4 different comprehension skills, but in guided reading, you're going to focus on one focus skill that's like an I can statement. And then a little bit more, interventions give you the ability to progress monitor more. You can progress monitor comprehension, fluency, word work, and vocabulary. Where with guided reading, you're going to assess the skills that you're using with graphic organizers for the kids. Interventions can be done in a small group or one-on-one, and with guided reading, they're going to be done mostly in small groups only. So here's a couple of options, scenarios. I'm going to give you some if-then scenarios here real quick. So if you're working with a small group of students that are all on grade level, then use the guided reading curriculum. So if you're working with students who are all on grade level, I would recommend using the guided reading curriculum. But if you have access to leveled readers and only use a guided reading framework, then use the guided reading curriculum. If you only use guided reading, but you need more leveled text for your group, so say you use guided reading only, but you need more books for the group, then you can use the intervention program I have and maybe even the guided reading together. I'll show you that in a minute. If you're working with students who are below grade level or who are advanced interventions is a thing, and it's kind of a big deal, then I would use the guided or the intervention program and maybe even the guided reading. If you need to progress monitor regularly, use the intervention program during the small group time. If you're working with students in a small group and you're providing additional instruction outside of the classroom as well, then use the intervention program. If you're utilizing aides, yay for you, or volunteers to work with small groups and you want to track their progress and collect that data, use the intervention program. And if you're working with a small group of 3 to 4 students in a tier 2 intervention, guess what? You're going to use the intervention program. If you're working one-on-one in a tier 3, you'll want the intervention program. So these if-then scenarios, I'm going to give you too. So you're getting all of these pages as well. Let's talk about the schedule for small group instruction. And oh my goodness, I am not going to be able to read this. It's so teeny tiny, but the good thing is I have these for you. Okay. So when I do a guided reading group with guided reading, I have 6 steps in my guided reading group. I'll do this from memory. Hopefully I won't blow it. Okay. Step number 1, I always give the kids an introduction. Remember, I'm working at their instructional level. They're usually in a range. There's kids, kind of in a relatively level range at my group. So I give an introduction about the book. I might highlight some things that I know they're going to struggle with, point to some pages, talk about some vocabulary that I think they might have a problem with that I can debug for them. So that's something I plan ahead of time for. And then they read silently. And that's about 10 minutes of reading silently. After they're done reading, then we ask open-ended questions. I don't go directly into the skill because I want to find out what they're thinking after they're done reading. So that's a couple minutes. And then we go into the skill, the I can skill. And then after that, I might do some word work, but I don't always have to with them. And finally, I will send them off with some sort of graphic organizer that they can use in the books that they're reading on their own that follows up with that skill that we worked on. So that's kind of what I do for guided reading. And it doesn't matter what level the kids are at. I use that same kind of system with them. And then for small group instruction with the intervention program, it's just a little bit different. It gives me a little bit less time because if I'm using the intervention program for my passages, this is really awesome because they're short. So if you're working with kids who are upper level readers, you're usually using chapter books in guided reading. The passages can be at their level, but they're 1 page. So you can literally be done in 1 day with the story or the nonfiction piece. So I follow the same format. I'll give an introduction for the passage. They'll spend time reading it, but we won't need as much time. We only need 5 minutes to read the intervention passages because they're nice and short. So that if you're short on time, that might be something you want to think about is how can you use the intervention passages in guided reading? You can get more groups in and you're still working at their ability levels there. And then they do their open-ended share. Then we may focus on a specific skill and follow that up with a little bit of word work, which is already on that page in the intervention program. I already have word work in there. I already have vocabulary and I have comprehension questions. And I have pages for myself as a teacher that can ask those comprehension questions. So it's pretty cool. And then we can do some activity afterwards at the end. So if you're going to do, I think I kind of jumped ahead because I cannot see the slide. If you're going to do guided reading and the intervention program, here's a couple of examples of what you can do too. And the time in red is how much time you need together. The rest of the time is like what they would do on their own. So let me go back a slide. So you would need 15 minutes here. This one, you would need 20 minutes. So you get the idea. And then 15 minutes again here if you're going to use guided reading and the intervention program combined. So that one goes through that one. And I'm almost to the end. Y'all are awesome for hanging out with me. I hope you're finding this helpful. I hope, but I haven't been able to read your comments yet because I'm so focused on this tiny little screen. But for spelling, this is the spelling layout that I have. And what I do for spelling, I teach differentiated spelling. Everybody has their own list of words. They all take a spelling test, but I don't do spelling tests. We have this whole system. If you haven't heard about how I teach spelling, you should definitely come to that webinar. But on Mondays, the time in red is the time we need as a class together. So Monday you can see as my biggest day. I need a half hour on Monday. So I'm going to plan around that. But look at the rest of the week. The rest of the week, I only need 10 minutes on Tuesday together. Wednesday, I don't even need any time as a whole class to do spelling. So if you have a 4-day week, you can shave off Wednesday pretty easily. Thursday, 5 minutes as a class. That's it. Friday, 5 minutes as a class. So you can get away with squeezing in your spelling if you do this in this routine pretty easily, except that Monday you need a big day. You need a chunk. And you can teach your spelling, like your spelling week doesn't have to go Monday through Friday. It could go Tuesday through Monday or Wednesday through Tuesday. So you could start your spelling week on a Wednesday and have your tests be on a Tuesday. I've done that before and it's kind of cool. But that's just another idea. If your Mondays were already really full and you had too many specials, but you didn't have that many specials on Wednesdays, maybe you're going to do your spelling where your Wednesdays is like your Monday. And here's your vocabulary. So this is a vocabulary curriculum. Time in red, 10 minutes. Like 15 at the most to teach vocabulary. And teaching vocabulary intentionally every day is super, super important for us to be doing. Kids need intentional vocabulary instruction. They can't just have really well-read books given to them. They need to actually be knowing these words and playing with them and understanding multiple meanings of them. So there needs to be some intentional vocabulary curriculum going on, but you don't need a lot of time. So that's a good thing. I want to talk about for a second, this is my last point I think I have here, is grammar in other subjects. So we talk about language. How can you incorporate grammar into other subjects? There's a lot of things that I do to make sure I'm still teaching those language skills that I need to cover and not having to necessarily have it be a whole separate part of my day. So if you're working with a whole group reading time, you can do an interactive edit lesson during your class time. You can also write a class summary about a text that you just read together or read aloud that you read together, and then highlight specific grammar skills. I used to do this where once a week we would do a class summary because my kids were terrible at summarizing. I don't know, like they just don't know how. So we needed to model it anyways. So we just did a summary of one of the books we read. And then throughout the week, each day we would say, okay, now let's look at our summary. Let's find all the words that have the AR pattern, and we would circle them or highlight them, and we would talk about them and how they sound, or you can do really anything with that summarizing page. So every day we would kind of play around with it and make it really interactive, or circle all the words that were the last word of that sentence, or where do we see words with commas, and what is that comma telling us? Where are all the proper nouns? Circle those. So write a summary once a week and then play around with it grammar-wise throughout the week. You can do something like that. Whole group writing, you can incorporate lots of grammar into your writing workshop, especially if you're during the revising process of a writing piece. You can be doing some specific grammar lessons in your revising section. You can also reteach specific grammar skills to your whole class and then immediately apply those skills to your writing too. And then during independent reading, you can have the kids use grammar bookmarks to find specific grammar skills while they're reading together or while they're reading on their own. You can create a word work literacy center during your reading workshop. You can have students complete interactive edits with partners or in small groups or independently during this time. You can also, during independent writing, do the same thing where the kids focus on a specific grammar skill and place that into a station. So maybe you have a word work station during your writing workshop. You can create a word work literacy station, create a writing work literacy station. And while they're peer revising for grammar and mechanics, you're doing a lot of stuff during that time as well. During small group reading, if you're doing guided reading or interventions, you can work on word work during that time. You can also isolate parts of speech and talk about those, spend a few minutes doing some word work, complete a word work extension activity, even if they would like during that intervention time. And for spelling, in your spelling, you're actually going to not focus. If you use differentiated spelling, you're not going to just focus on memorizing a list of words for the week, but rather you're actually focusing on understanding word patterns and how they go together. And that's huge for grammar and mechanics. You're going to identify synonyms in terms of parts of speech that can be used and interchanged. And you're going to have a weekly focus skill in spelling that is going to be directly tied to grammar as well. So all of this fits together. In vocabulary, again, too, you're going to discuss and identify vocabulary in parts of speech and apply the words appropriately into the different parts of speech. So I have all of these pages for you as well that you're going to get a copy of. And I think that's all I have. Yes. So that's all of the pages that you're getting. There's going to be a link coming up for that. Either Piper or Andy can get that for me. And can we put a link for the webinars too? Because I have a bunch of live webinars coming up in July and in August. You can see all of these live webinars. Register for them. They're free to register for. You need to register on like just showing up tonight, which is really awesome. But you'll get a special link. And that link is what you click when it's time to start the webinar. So you'll need to get your email. Make sure you get that link. If you're using a school account, sometimes it gets blocked. So just check your junk folder or register with a home email and you'll be able to get in on the webinars. So that would be awesome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, I think I can watch this. Thank you. Oh, let me put this down. There. How cool is that? Ellen said, thank you. I can show comments. Let's see. A thumbs up. Yay. Are y'all still with me? Hi, everybody. Oh, Jennifer, look at, she said, I used the spelling program and it was awesome. That's amazing. So thank you, Jennifer, for saying that. The spelling program that I have is for grades 2 through 5. And I'm pretty sure there's a webinar not, if it's not in July, it's going to be in August. You can register. You can hear all about like no more traditional spelling. Like it's amazing. It's fun. The kids love it. It's interactive and they actually learn the words for more than just the week. Laura said kids actually studied over the weekend. Oh, that's what she say. Oh, Laura said we used to do spelling Thursday to Wednesdays. Kids did better because they actually studied over the weekend. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Laura. I'm just reading through your comments now. Ellen said, how do you teach vocabulary? I teach vocabulary in 15 minutes a day as a whole group. And I actually have a vocabulary curriculum. It's at teachvocab.com. And you can look at it there. You can download the preview and you can see how I teach on Monday, what I teach on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's very different than, again, I don't like to do things the traditional old school way. I spent 3 years actually reading books and researching for the vocabulary before the curriculum was finished. So that I have available for grades 3 through 6. But my friend, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Miss DeCarbo from Christina DeCarbo. She has kindergarten through second grade versions of vocabulary. And that's at primaryvocabulary.com. So if you wanted to check that out, you can see the previews and all that. Lizette said, thank you. It's very helpful. Awesome. I'm so glad because I've been getting this question like forever. How are you scheduling things? How are you scheduling? Melissa said, yes, very helpful. I did spelling like you do last year and my students loved it. I just worry about the schedule for small group. Yes. So chances are, we don't know our kids yet. We don't know their personalities. We don't know how slow they can be in transition times. We don't really know how much time we're going to have. And so we have to kind of make our best guess. And most likely you're going to have to tweak things, right? Because teaching is, like I've said before, that GPS, when you take the wrong turn, it's like recalculating, and that's okay. We can be flexible. We have to be flexible. We're teachers. We have to. You're welcome, Betsy. Thank you. Ellen said we have to use words their way. I like words their way, and it's nice, but it doesn't go beyond the list building as much as you can with the differentiated spelling. So I know a lot of teachers that are actually using both. So just something to think about. Let's see. Rebecca said, still wishing for all your curriculum. You're so sweet. Talk to your principals. Maybe you can get some purchase orders. I know. And on Teachable, you can use payment plans too. So that might be something you can think about. We can put a link up for Teachable to use payment plans. Let's see. Oh, okay. Jennifer said, do you use leveled readers or intervention passages? It depends. I've done both. So in one school that I worked at, I had a guided reading room that was like an amazing guided reading resource room. And I loved it. I used those books a lot. But for my kids that are older, I really like using intervention passages because of the fact that they're short. For me personally, as a teacher, it was really hard to keep up with 3 or 4 different chapter books that my groups were reading. And with the intervention program, the passages are in their ability level, but they're not so much content where we had to feel like we were reading the same book forever, right? Also, with the kids who are struggling as readers in the upper grades, sometimes it's like the books that are available that are appropriate for their ability level are usually very babyish. So with the intervention program, they never felt like the passages were babyish for them, and nobody really noticed that they were reading something that was a little bit less of a strong text because it looked the same as everybody else's passages. So that was really, really helpful for their confidence as well. And they got to see their progress really quickly. Also, with struggling readers, a textbook, a chapter book can be very overwhelming, but one page of a passage doesn't feel so overwhelming, and they can finish it very easily compared to trying to read something that's really long and difficult for them. So those are just a few thoughts on that. Yeah, like the idea of waiting to see what they know first. Awesome. Oh, good. Maureen says, thanks so much for this. You make this so clear. Yay. And I'm really, this is like, I wanted to hop on because I really wanted to be able to make this a way for teachers to feel like they can take a deep breath and go back in the fall with a solid schedule for things. And you can feel a little bit more relaxed this summer, knowing that you have some options for scheduling and things too. Okay, there we go. Okay. Ellen says, we have RTI in our school, so I only use guided reading groups. I pull small groups for on grade level and above grade level. I teach first grade, so there's a wide range of levels. Yes, definitely agree. Yeah. You guys all got the download, right? Oh, what do you suggest when you're required to see? Oh, Melissa said, what do you suggest when you're required to see every group every day? um, uh, volunteers, help, and aid. I don't know. Like, you should clone yourself. I'm not sure. That would be really hard to do. I think if you're required to do that, you might want to, what I would have to do probably is break up my guided reading groups into almost an A-B thing. So instead of doing an entire guided reading lesson, I might just do the first couple parts of the lesson, but that's really hard to do too. Or I would shorten my reading time. Using the intervention passages would really help for sure, but that's tough. I don't have a really good answer for that one. That's a tough one. Let's see. Catherine, thank you. I love seeing people on here I've seen before. Jen, you rock. I've learned so much from you this summer. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up because I actually have to go live in my lifetime webinar group in a little bit. I'm going to do a live Q&A in there. Oh, here. Yeah, we got the link up. Okay, awesome. Okay, Angela said, I typed the entire link and it didn't work. It doesn't work as a hyperlink. Is it restricted? I'm not sure what happened with that, but when I'm done, I'm going to sign off in just a second. When I'm done, we'll put it in the actual title too, and I'll make sure, I'll double check. Don't worry, we'll make sure we get them too if they're not working right away. And sometimes if you're on, it's a Google Drive, so it might be like if the computer is restricting it, your computer is restricting it on your end, but I know it's available to download, so I'll make sure that you can get it. Yeah, try from another computer. Awesome. Okay, we'll make sure it works. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off and I'll double check that. And then I hope you enjoyed the content today and we will talk again soon. And have a great 4th of July, by the way. That's coming up. Have a great 4th of July. And maybe I'll see you in another Facebook Live or in one of the live webinars. Go to jenbengalwebinars.com to register. Take care, guys, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.